back. David Eon and the gorgeous Miss Lady Pop Hunter. She is back. She wasn't feeling well, but we got her again.
Yay.
I see her every day. I'm the lucky one. But today, you hear that in the background? I wonder if they can hear that. There is a kid out in the street, or not in the street, but sitting in front of his house practicing the trumpet because they won't let him do it at home. Say, go outside, do that, Jimmy. But what we wanted to talk about was the top 10 things that we had as kids, and probably you, that our children will never know.
Mm-hmm.
Because these are iconic cultural things that we all kind of grew up with as children that we have watched just kind of fade away and die.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a sad thing. We've talked about this amongst ourselves a few times, and we just thought we would share the discussion with everyone else and see what you thought about it, find out what your input is, see if you have any, you want to chime in on it, are these things that you really miss. And the first thing on that list is Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah. Saturday mornings were good.
Saturday mornings were great.
Yeah.
I remember waking up because you couldn't get me out of bed to save your life on like a weekday when you had to go to school. I hated going to school. I didn't want to get up. But Saturday morning at 5:30, like a shot, I was up. No alarm or nothing. And I'd be sitting in front of the TV, ABC, because believe it or not, there were only 3 television networks, younger people who were watching. There was no cable. 3 TV shows, 3 TV networks, 4 if you count PBS, but they didn't do Saturday mornings. And then a couple of maybe 3 UHF stations, which were local broadcast stations that had like maybe a 1,500 mile radius.
1,500 miles.
50 or 100.
Oh, I thought you said 1,500.
If you could,
golly,
if you could pick them up.
Yeah,
If you could pick them up.
Couldn't.
Yeah, usually it was really bad. And that was when you had analog television, because they don't have that anymore. It's all digital now.
Yeah.
Big bowl of cereal, blueberry or something you shouldn't be eating. And the first one that would come up for me was Captain Bob. And if anyone remembers Captain Bob on ABC, she doesn't remember. Was
I never heard of no Captain
he would
Bob.
paint. He would do. It was a painting show. He'd teach you how to paint and draw, and he'd invite children to send their images in. Oh, whatever you painted, send it in, and I'll show it. And he did, and they were terrible because we were all little kids. But then after that, at 6 o'clock, the real shows would start, and I was up watching that every morning, every Saturday morning.
Yeah, that was good. I don't know. I got up around 7.
You were not dedicated.
I was dedicated enough. Got up around 7 and watched TV. And then I remember the change because it happened, seemed like suddenly. You had cartoons and then they would take one off and put in a program like, not Saved by the Bell, but they had a show that was similar to it. It was a bunch of teenagers in school. I don't know what the name of it was, but every few months they would take off a cartoon and put in a regular program, I guess a live action program. And then all of a sudden, all the cartoons were gone.
Yeah, and that's because of an act of Congress. Congress kind of destroyed it because they had enacted a bill that said that children's television programming couldn't be used to sell products and couldn't be used to educate. And that's why they got rid of Schoolhouse Rock, which was something that they would interject between cartoons, and it would be played like in the commercial slots. And this is how I learned multiplication tables. I didn't learn it in school. I learned it watching these. But
Congress ruined cartoons anyway
Yeah.
because at first it was cartoons are too violent. So then you went from Tom and Jerry to Tom and Jerry and Friends.
yeah, that show was dumb.
Yeah, and then you know because cartoon the people that made the cartoons were trying to take out a lot of the violence and put in other things, and now we're friendly and we get along, and it's like it wasn't as good.
It didn't make sense.
Yeah, so you got a lot of your shows taken off. So.
Yeah, but that's something that we all grew up with. That was before cable. That was before acts of Congress and everything else that's just gone. Because now there's no 3 networks. There's like 300 networks.
And now you got Cartoon
And
Network,
they
and
all
the
suck.
cartoons are stupid. They should have a retro cartoon, like they got Me TV.
Yeah.
I don't know if everybody. I'm sure it is. That's a national thing. But they play all those old shows, or it's another one that play a lot of the old classic shows, like sitcoms and stuff like that. They should have one for cartoons.
Yeah. That's what Cartoon Network started out as. I don't know what they do now. They have some retro stuff.
A little bit, but then they always had you know, that modern stuff they got now. So I don't know.
Number 2 on the list is Christmas being fun. Because I remember when I was very young, and I didn't have a very good upbringing, but in the very early years when my mother still did Christmas, I remember being like 5 years old and wanting to sleep in the living room every night because the Christmas tree was sitting in there, and I wanted the lights out and the tree on, and I wanted to sleep there and watch the tree. Wasn't going to get nothing under the tree, but I wanted to watch the tree anyways, and it was just fun. And then I remember opening up my Weeble Camper playset, which was fantastic. Stuff like that. It was like, wow, Christmas is coming. This is so great. And then you grow up, and Christmas is a burden.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, it's Christmas. Give me a break.
You had to pay for everything. You find out that Christmas is a fraud.
Yeah, and then you're not appreciated for your efforts a lot of the time. You know, kids, they expect, they have high expectations, and then they don't like what they got, and they blur the line between needs and wants.
Not just them, adults.
Adults too. Adults can be really bad.
Yeah, you give them something and, oh, this is, not what I wanted, or, oh, you only paid $20 for this, but it's something you needed.
Yeah.
You know.
They value your friendship based on how much you spent.
Yeah.
And it's just not the same anymore. It doesn't have that kind of magical ambiance that it once did.
Yeah.
Number 3 is playing with toys. We used to play with toys when we were kids. Kids don't have toys anymore. Adults are still playing with toys. You know, this is Mego, Muhammad Ali here. Who's buying these Megos? Not little 7-year-old Johnny. Johnny don't care about this. Johnny wants to do this all day. People 25 and up are the ones buying these. And most of them aren't opening the packages. Children don't play with toys anymore. Adults do. And they're still actually really playing with them, because what's really popular right now? Adult action figure photography. So that's still kind of playing with toys. But children aren't playing with toys. They want the instant gratification that comes from screwing around with video games.
Well, we ain't live in a society of instant gratification. So.
Yeah, it's gotten worse over the years.
Yeah.
That they've lost that joy. And the lack of interest in that has led to the demise of toy stores.
Yeah. Now you don't see any toy stores anywhere because the kids don't buy stuff. And the stuff that's in there is garbage anyway. Like the toys that they have.
For children, it's junk.
Yeah, they don't even look good.
All the imagination goes into the adult collector stuff, but you're not going to pay $45 for an action figure and then give it to Timmy to play with. No, Timmy
getting that one out of Dollar General.
Yeah, Timmy's getting the one out of Dollar General. And he don't want it anyway.
No, because they're going to tear it up. So why spend $50 when it's going to be torn up in 2 weeks? Go down to Dollar Tree. I mean,
Five Below.
Money. Yeah, something like that.
And tying in with that, number 4, board games and puzzles.
Yeah.
Something to interact with, something to problem solve with. Playing a board game and having a strategy, putting a puzzle together and using your brain. They don't want to do that anymore. They want to do this. They want to sit there and press buttons. How fast can I press buttons? I got to press buttons faster. That's all they do. Kids don't get together. They'll sit there and play games against each other, but they're not going to sit there and play Monopoly for 6 hours and use their brain. Those days are gone.
Yeah, long
Number 5, playing in playgrounds is fading away. When I was a kid, playgrounds were full all the time, right up until they kicked you out. Because when it got dark, if you were still in the playground in a lot of areas, I grew up in Boston, a squad car eventually would come by and put a spotlight on you and say, hey, you know, you got to get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays, for the most part, there's nobody there. You know, you and I've been in a few different states, and we're in Georgia right now, and it's not quite as bad because you see adults there with maybe a baby, but for the most part, I mean, hordes of neighborhood kids don't congregate at the playground anymore and hang around and actually play with the equipment. Just doesn't seem to be interesting.
No, they're hoard inside the house. Suck up all the air.
I'm going to go outside. I have to walk all the way down there.
Yeah,
it's hot. They whine all the time. When I grew up, there was no home air conditioning. Okay? If you had a home air conditioner, you were loaded.
Yeah, we sit outside all day. And they called us in for lunch.
Mm-hmm.
We ran in to go to the bathroom real quick.
You got lunch?
Yeah.
That ties in with number 7, of course, is running around the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Going out and running around and exploring and hanging around with your friends and whatever. Teenagers still do it. They go out because basically they want to get away from.
Good. They're breaking into your house.
Yeah, probably. But when I was a kid, I remember being as young as 5 or 6 years old and walking around the street. And like I said, I grew up in Boston. There's no woods. You know, I'm walking around in alleys and going in and out of basement doors in apartment buildings, places I shouldn't have been. Yeah, places I shouldn't have been. But I had the freedom to do so. Now you don't, even though, quite frankly, it's no more dangerous now than it was back in the 70s and 80s. But it just seems that way because that's how it's portrayed in the media.
Yeah. But, I don't know. I think it's worse now because, I don't know. It just seems like it is. Because when I grew up when I grew up in the neighborhood I grew up in, nobody got robbed. But now you have all kinds of break-ins. But then that goes, you get break-ins and people acting up. But then that goes into a whole different topic. So yeah, you can go ahead.
But that's, that whole concept has just faded away.
Mm-hmm.
Number 7, using their own imaginations as opposed to following the storyline of someone else's. Because you can make the argument that you're using your imagination when you're playing video games, which is what mostly kids do to entertain themselves now. You're not. You're borrowing someone else's because someone else wrote that and created that storyline, and no matter how many different levels or different variants or options there are, they still created those options. Someone else, a team of writers on a staff at a video game company, came up with all that, and you're just following their formats. You're not really using your imagination when you're playing games. And when we were kids, and there were no video games, you know, or it was just coming out. I was around when that stuff was just starting to pop up, when arcade machines were first appearing. I was a kid. When they had stand-up arcade machines and laundromats, and they had a line out the door because no one had ever seen anything like that before. You ran around and you played, and you used your imagination. You pretended to be somebody. You ran around with a wiffle bat and pretended it was a machine gun, or whatever you were doing, whatever struck your imagination. But they don't use them anymore. It's kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
Number 8, television cartoon specials. After school, not after school, but prime
after
time.
School specials too.
Yeah, after school specials, but more specifically, I'm thinking of like prime time, like 8 o'clock, and they advertise it for a month that the Grinch is coming on. Yeah. Or
Garfield.
Yeah, the latest Peanuts. You know, Charlie Brown, a new special from Charles M. Schultz, or a reissue, like, because every year they would play Charlie Brown Christmas. Yeah. Now, when that kind of stuff comes on, it comes on for us. They play the old shows occasionally.
Do they? They still play?
Yeah, like Charlie Brown, because they've tried to ban Charlie Brown Halloween and Christmas for the
Well,
last
they
few
wanted
years
to
in a
take
row.
that one part out of Charlie Brown Christmas, where he's reading that portion out of the Bible about the wise men and all that stuff.
Yeah,
They wanted to take that piece
they're
out.
trying to manipulate it.
Yeah, and then they wanted to ban Charlie Brown because Lucy is a bully.
A bully. But we used to anticipate that. The Hobbit originally was a primetime television cartoon special. You know, Rudolph and Frosty.
Mm-hmm.
You know, stop motion specials. But they don't do that kind of stuff for kids anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But you can find the old ones. They might rehash occasionally. But that's nostalgia. That's for us. It's not really for the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Number 9 is the circus. Circuses are fading away, and so is interest in them. And it really kind of died almost officially when Barnum and Bailey Circus filed for bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
And they filed for bankruptcy because of constant lawsuits from animal rights groups, even though they haven't done animal acts for years. They had long since stopped because they were like, okay, we're not going to do the animal acts anymore because we're sick of being sued. And they were still getting sued years later. And it was so much that they said, we can't afford the lawsuits anymore. We're closing our doors. Barnum and Bailey Circus is gone forever.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of other circuses have gone under the same way. And it's kind of fading away. They're disappearing.
Mm-hmm. I've been to the circus once as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. So
I went to.
it wasn't a big thing where I was, so you know, so I don't really miss it all that much. It was all right the times I went.
Yeah.
But
I think it was once upon a time. It's just a bigger deal for younger people.
yeah.
You know. Number 10, and you kind of alluded to this already.
Mm-hmm.
The joy of going to a toy store. The joy of going to a toy store. When we were kids, it was like, oh, you were going to go to a toy store, or you went to any store that had a toy department, you wanted to go and check it out. But since they don't care about toys anymore,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean anything. And there are very few dedicated toy stores anymore. You got Think Geek, but that's not for kids.
But that's not a toy store.
Well, it's got all toys in it, but
Yeah.
they're for adults. It's an adult collector pocket.
Yeah, that's the only thing gonna last. Not last, but those types of stores do good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those nostalgic stores like Thinking. Every time we go into GameStop, people are always at the toy section,
Yeah,
and that's for adults.
that's for adults, not for the kids. So the kids, since they don't have an interest very very much in toys anymore, the idea of, hey, you want to go to the toy store? I don't know. You know, it doesn't mean anything to them.
No.
And if you wanted to bring them to one, there aren't very many left. I mean, what are you going to do now? Take them to the toy department in Target, or take them to the toy department in Walmart? Because there's no dedicated toy stores anymore, and they've been gone a lot longer than you think. It's a different topic of discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Toys R Us was not the last toy store.
Yeah.
Toys R Us wasn't a toy store anymore. It was a furniture store with a toy department.
Mm-hmm.
Their primary function was selling infant, baby, and toddler furniture, clothing, and accessories with a toy department, because they started out as a major toy store. I remember when I was a kid, even when Child World was still in existence, it was a huge building filled with all toys. But since interest was fading away from that, they shrunk that down and shrunk it down every year, and had all other departments. The bicycle department got bigger, the video game department got bigger, the furniture department got bigger, and then the toy department got smaller and smaller. And then, be honest, when you went to Toys R Us, where did you go?
Yeah, the adult collector.
Adult collection set. You concentrated probably on 2 or 3 aisles.
Mm-hmm.
You know, look at the wrestling figures, look at the Star Wars figures, maybe go look at Legos if you were into that. The rest of the toy store was of no interest.
Yeah.
KB was the last real big toy store chain, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And a couple of bonuses, a couple of honorable mentions. Children's programming that's not trying to program your children.
Mm-hmm.
Children's programming that hasn't been hijacked by political or social agendas. You don't see that anymore. When we grew up, it was a different lifestyle. It was, when you watched Masters of the Universe, when you watched Brave Star, when you watched Fat Albert and the Gang, the Cosby Kids, it was entertaining and there was an ethical, moral discussion. I think that's what this is most known for, is that bit on the end where they say, today we learned that, whatever they interject with, because they had a different one for everyone. Even the Thundercats did it, But then, of course, Act of Congress, you can't use it to teach people, but you can use it to influence them. And that's what they do now. Without getting too political, because we don't like to talk about politics too much on this channel. But this is a fantastic example of that. This is Sesame Street old school, 69 to 74. And when my youngest was really young, this is what he watched, not modern Sesame Street. If you watch an episode of this and compared it to the most recent episode of Sesame Street, it almost make you cry. How different it is. This had a plot. It was slow paced. It was gentle. It made sense. It was educational. Now it's flash and blur and screaming puppets, loud, obnoxious puppets. No
music and
blaring
and then
music.
One time I saw the special guest that they had on, and I'm sitting there like, why would you put that person on Sesame Street? Just from what they project in the public, in the media,
in the real world.
I wouldn't want them telling my kids nothing.
Yeah. Because it's all political and social now.
Yeah.
It's a different type of education. And, it's what the person who produces those shows thinks is good for your kids rather than what you think is good for them. Yeah. Be very careful about what your kids are watching nowadays. Yeah. Honestly, it's changed so much. And one more bonus. Good music. Yeah. Where has the music gone? It's faded away. I mean, when we were at the pocket of really diverse and interesting music is between 1954 to about 1994, and you can hear the progression, and then somewhere in the mid 90s it just dropped off, and it turned into a formula where they have like a handful of the same people are writing the same music and making it sound a little different, but it's really not that different. It really kind of all sounds the same.
It kind of almost all got the same words. I saw a video on YouTube, and they showed some of the top songs for that month or whatever, and they showed the lyrics, and the lyrics were almost the same.
Yeah. Because the same people
write them. It's only like 5-6 people that write all these songs. And then the music was slightly different. Yeah,
and then they formulate the music to make it all kind of sounds the same. They push the music on you, and it's just not good anymore. No. But they tell you it is, and most people believe it. Most people who listen to it, they don't know any better. They don't listen to the old stuff unless you introduce your kids to it. Yeah. They can't tell the difference. And I see that all the time. Like if I pull up on YouTube and I play some old Led Zeppelin music or some old Pink Floyd or something like that, and you read the comments, and there's a lot of comments from younger people like, wow, I never heard stuff like this before. I can't believe, what happened. I'm really hooked on this retro 70s music or this retro 80s music now. And there's comments from like 15-year-olds and stuff that are just dumbfounded when they hear vintage music. Like,
because then, like Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, all of those people, if you look at the videos, it was a full band. Yeah. A band of like 5. Now, these artists, they call them artists, but
everybody's a freaking artist now. The guy who makes your sandwich is an artist.
Yeah, the Subway guy is an artist.
He's a sandwich artist.
Yeah, but they don't play music.
No.
I mean, some of them can play an instrument, but you don't have a band on stage. You got a singer, and then a person with a mixing board or something. But you don't have like a somebody on keyboard or bass guitar or lead guitar, or sometimes on some bands you got a whole brass section.
Yeah.
And then you got the drummer.
Even
you don't get all
even
that.
the disco era, and
Yeah.
I got to admit, I confess, I'm a fan of disco. You watch Casey and the Sunshine Band doing a live performance from the 70s, and they got the whole brass section out there,
Yeah.
and every band member is soaked in sweat, and they are cranking it out. You don't see that anymore because they lip sync it all.
If
You
you
know, you don't
watch,
know if you're watching anything for real or not.
if you watch Earth, Wind and Fire,
Oh yeah.
what's that song where they dancing around the stage? All of them. I mean,
Like
they
every
got,
song.
well, it's one in particular. You know the one I'm talking about. I can't think of it now. I cannot think of the name of the song. I'll think about it in a little bit.
Yeah.
But the whole band, all their instruments, and they're dancing and they're playing and they're sweating, and they're not out of breath. They're not off key or nothing. But they're playing the instruments.
The only time you see that now is on Broadway.
Yeah.
Singers and dancers who are cranking it. But these performers, I hesitate to call them artists.
I hesitate to call them performers.
Well, they're putting on a performance. Or they don't have that kind of skill. They don't have that kind of skill anymore. And it's not fun anymore. You know, even rap was
Boogie
fun.
Wonderland.
Boogie Wonderland. Boogie Wonderland. Yeah, that's right. But even rap in the day was fun. When we were the Fat Boys and Run DMC and all of them, that was fun. It's not fun anymore.
Now it's just
vulgar.
Vulgar.
It's very vulgar and
Foul.
nasty.
And lewd.
It went through a transformation and never
in
came
the
back.
90s. Anyway.
Yeah.
That's it.
What can we say? Do you agree with our list? Is there anything on that list that really struck a nerve where you were just like, wow, man, that has changed? Tell us about it in the comment section down below. Is there something you would add? Something that you think we missed? Tell us about it in the comment section down below because we already went over 10. May as well add a couple more. But if you get where we're coming from, please do give the video a thumbs up, share it if you can, subscribe if you're new, check out some of the other videos if you have not. You, right there, I see you hiding. Check out some of the other videos. I'm going to wake these people up, I'm telling you. Find us on Instagram, Open by Chance on Instagram, and we will see you again soon. So, thanks for watching.